Thanks, Ann. I'm here with Brad Ham, who's the Dean of the IU Journalism School. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Bill Mitchell earlier talked about making smart experiments in order to try and survive. I'm curious if that applies to teaching journalism students in journalism schools as well. Are you guys finding yourselves in a position to try and make some of these smart experiments and see what works?
Well, one of the fascinating things is the field changes about every 15 to 20 years. So even if you look back, the same stories we hear today are the stories we heard in the 1930s. Here comes radio, here comes motion pictures, you're seeing the news in movie theaters. So it changes constantly. So I think journalism schools have always had to change rapidly, and I think that's true for us today. On the other hand, the basics still apply. We do history, we do law, we do ethics, we do basic writing, and those core classes hold us for a long time.
We've talked a lot about technology this evening. One of the frustrations I hear about from journalism school professors is that it's so hard to keep up with the technological curve, and it's so hard to keep a curriculum that follows the technology. What are you doing to remedy that?
Because it changes so much, you really can't chase it. I mean, if you decided 2 years ago, the people who graduated 2 years ago, how would they know about Twitter? So what you do is you try to create people who have the ability to adapt. Two of the most incredible graduates for us in this area, Rafat Ali, who did paidcontent.org, and Rusty Coates, who's a major leader for Scripps Howard. Both of them weren't trained in this area, but they're smart people. They learn to adapt, and as in many fields, as you go along, you adapt. And that's what we try to teach, people who are flexible.
Are we almost in a position where the students are going to be teaching the professors instead of having it be the other way around for so many centuries?
I think we always learn from students, but one thing to remember, I think, is as we look, the New York Times 15 years ago had 1.2 million circulation. It has 1.1 million now, but its website went from 0 to 18 million. The journalism side of the New York Times has never reached more people. It's never been more influential, and it's an amazing thing. And it's the ad side that's struggling, the business side that's struggling. The journalism side is enormously powerful.
We talked also about how we're in an era where a lot of newspapers are going online only, or some of them even going out of business. IU for a long time had been a premier print journalism school in this country. Right. Its ranking has slipped in some publications as time has gone on over the last 15 or 20 years. You've said you want to keep that ranking coming up as during your tenure as dean. How does technology and teaching technology figure into that, and what programs are there for students that you think will help not just teach them but also improve the ranking of the school?
Well, in journalism schools aren't ranked like law and business and others as often that way, but I think the ability to attract the best students, you have to have one of the best programs in the nation or in the world, and that's one of the things. We teach a new media class where we take students to Seoul for spring break as a case study, and they have a digital media city that's second to none in the world. That kind of exposure to let them see the best technology in the world and to bring it back and apply it to their own lives and to American media is important.
Brad Ham is the Dean of the IU Ernie Pyle School of Journalism. Thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And back to you in the studio.
All right, thanks so much, Stan. I want to open this now. We have a few more minutes left in the show, and I really want to talk about the future of communication when we're talking about new media. And why don't we start down here at the very end? Where do you see us going when it comes to communication?
I think one of the things we're going to see and are increasingly seeing is what we are calling pervasive or ubiquitous technology. And this means, I think, moving communication and computing off of screens, whether it's our laptops or even off of our phones, into other objects in our world, even perhaps our clothing. And actually, Indiana University, there's a lot of people working on projects related to looking at this form of computing and communication. And I think the other trend we're going to see is engaging people who have not traditionally been what we call technology users or adopters. Not just young people, youth, but we're going to see increasingly senior citizens. They're one of the fastest growing demographics in terms of using new technology. There was an article in the New York Times a few months ago about senior citizens using Skype, for example, to talk to grandkids. So I think those are two trends that I see that I think are going to be incredibly important for all of us to think about in the near future.
Bob, would you like to say, what is the Herald Times doing to address that?
When Kalpana talks about the near future, I used to think the future that she was talking about would have been several years away, long vision, but we look at things now in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. But for newspapers, I think we're still in that period of trying to adapt to mobile. And Of course, social networking kinds of things. I think paid content is going to happen for traditional media. Whether that succeeds or not, I don't know. But we've been doing it for 6 years, and I think the message I would give people is that you can't just put everything online and expect people are going to pay for it. You have to find things that people are willing to pay for, like our databases, like being able to comment on our site, like our archives. So you have to find things that people might be willing to pay for.
That's very, very interesting, because as I wanted to bring this point up about the Ann Arbor newspaper that has completely stopped production on their newspaper and has completely gone online. What do you think about that?
Well, it was a shock to me in a community like Ann Arbor that they would go from, you know, having a daily newspaper to wiping it away that quickly. And I'm not sure how successful they're being. They have a lot fewer journalists or fewer people working in their operation, obviously. I can't imagine that they're covering the community as well as they used to, and I think that's a loss for Ann Arbor.
Do you think that more, Norika, why don't you talk to this, do you think that more publications, communications are going to go this route? Online, strictly, no paper?
Sure, and then many people are more comfortable with reading online. I love my iPhone app on the New York Times, where I just read it every time I go. So we are much more really connected. Highly connectiveness really makes a difference also. That's a different, very different idea from the older generation. Another thing I like to point out is that because of the ubiquitous, people's concept of privacy has been kind of changed pretty much. So people don't even think about technologies because it's all embedded somewhere else, or it's on a cell phone. We don't really think about we are watching. But this issue of privacy, this is something we have to really think a little bit more consciously about in the future.
It's a very interesting concept and something that a lot of people. One last thing, I just saw that the Entertainment Weekly is actually going to be putting a video, some sort of video projection on their magazine itself. So talking about new media and new uses. I don't know how that's going to happen. But thank you all so much for being here. And thanks so much for joining us for this edition of InFocus, and of course our panel experts. Stan, thanks for your help tonight.
Thank you, Anna. It was a lot of fun.
Yes, it was. We've talked about watching video on the net and blogging all night, so you can do the same thing. Post your question for next month at infocus@indiana.edu, or if you would like to participate in a blog, leave a comment, or see portions of this show, please visit our website, indianapublicmedia.org/infocus. Next month, we will be discussing K-12 public education concerns addressing funding, the Indiana school system, and alternative learning. Next time on InFocus.
Production support for InFocus is provided by Smithville, a locally owned business serving central and southern Indiana since 1922, with residential and business internet, voice, and security services. Smithville, local pride, global technology. Information at smithville.net. Hoosier Energy, providing electricity for central and southern Indiana electric cooperatives and their member customers. Information at hpen.com. And by viewers like you. Thank you.